Hi, and welcome to OCP Academy number 3, translating personas into products. So in this conversation, I want to move on from where we talked about last time, which was really about the value of value-based messaging and persona-based marketing and how to define a persona, how to use that from a marketing perspective to define value. And I brought up this concept that the way you get to product to market fit is what I call the Ouroboros of intrigue. It's this idea that you have a continuous alignment and continuous connection between the technical alignment and the business value of a product or a company, depending on how many products you have. So what we need to do when we're thinking about this from a bigger perspective and how it fits as for an ISV or a smaller vendor looking to keep their product in line or add new products to how they go to market or decide whether a new direction is appropriate really depends on how these two align for you and where you can see additional connection points. Can you make this two-dimensional Ouroboros into a three-dimensional Ouroboros? And a lot of this comes because, and I won't go into detail here, but finding the prospect to customer journey is complicated. You have a whole bunch of issues where it's just hard to find the right person. It's hard to find the right company because there's so many products and because there is such an industry and regulatory overhead nowadays. Finding the right customer at the right point in their journey to have a conversation so that you can ensure that you are bringing value to them so they'll stay a customer long term is extraordinarily complicated right now. And we, just to give you a refresher, went through the three-step processes for value-based messaging. One is you define the persona, and you define them by what they do, what they care about, what they want to be when they grow up, as it were, and who they work with. So this idea that a person in the context of marketing and how do we make sure that our products match what they need is really about what do they do, how do they do it, when do they do it, why do they do it. And then you define how your product makes their life better by understanding their hassles. You can call these their pain points. You can call these gaps in their process. Doesn't really matter. I call them hassles because I used to call this a hassle map because you're mapping out all the hassles. Because then what we want to do is we want to understand how these different hassles for these different users and influencers and decision makers, how do they fit into the company, right? Because at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is we're trying to sell to a company. Yes, our entry point is a person, but if we don't get all three of those people, the decision maker, the user, and the influencer, all to agree, we won't get a sale. That's well documented statistically nowadays that it's very rare for most companies that you have one person who makes the whole decision. Yes, in small businesses and consumer area, yes, that's absolutely true. But most B2Bs, if they have more than 10 people, they have more than one decision maker, more than one user, and more than one influencer. So it brings up a good question, particularly because most of probably the ISVs and product developers who are here is if you can't do everything for everyone, how do you balance what the existing customer, or you could even put in brackets your ideal customer wants, with what's happening in the market? How do you acquire new customers? So what's the balance of if you're brand new to this game, initial vision versus what's in the market? And if you are a company looking at how do you add more products to your portfolio, it's how do you not ruin your brand with your existing customers by bringing in a product that you can't manage and you can't manage the roadmaps. And so, again, still with the reminder part of the conversation, how does marketing fit in this? We really have two rules. Value-based messaging is supposed to keep us centered in the middle of this, where we're balancing technical and business part. And when we talk about the technical parts of what marketing does, it's really around the data sheets of features, the free trials, the technical pieces that are designed to keep the existing audience base happy and interested. And what you can't see under my head is that the ROI calculators, the testimonials, all that stuff is about new customer acquisition. And the idea is that we are always balancing these. Balance doesn't always look like 100% of the scale being balanced. Sometimes some releases are for new customers. Sometimes new releases are for, or new products are for existing customers. And the marketing is designed that our thematics throughout the journey align all the time at the center of what does our product do best. And that's why this conversation is so valuable. It's because it really is about connecting the two pieces. And it means that we have this really interesting question of, well, does this work for product management or for designing and developing a product if you're a very small company? And the answer is yes. Obviously product management and the engineers and developers are going to focus more on the technical side, the capabilities roadmap, but they should be aware of how the business value modifies the capabilities and should modify the roadmap. There should be an intertwining between these two. And what's the role of a product in a company? This may sound very obvious or may sound like an intuitive question to many of you on this, watching this, but let's be declarative here. The product's role is twofold. One is to grab attention of potential buyers, and two, and this is the more subtle part, the product's role is to stay ahead of existing customers. We need to be able to, because we want to design a product so that when the market says, right, everything must be in blue balls now, we don't want to be 6 months behind. We want to be, close to the edge. So we want to have a sense of what the market is talking about, what the market is doing, because that should influence our roadmap. It should change our priorities. If there's basic technical debt items that you need to think about, those should fit on there. But when we're deciding between one new feature and another new feature, what is happening in the market should be a dominant factor in which one wins the battle of which one gets made first. So, I keep talking about value and the alignment. Can we reverse engineer this? So, the example I used last time was the marketing that was used for cell phones. And, how would that fit into the next new feature of a cell phone? So you can reverse engineer. It's actually relatively straightforward. I ended here where we're talking about the tech specs, lead to the attributes, lead to the value themes. And this is an idea where we're trying to tie what we already built to what a user would buy and how would they buy it? How would we make this, what's already built, attractive to a user? But if we just kind of swap that and we look at the market and what they're looking for, and we tie that back to an attribute, and then we tie that to a feature, that's literally road mapping 101. That's actually, product development 101. So we can use these two. Once we get into the practice and we have that good relationship with the people who are doing the external market, and they know our product, and they can help us with this middle part, which is the hardest part, the attributes, which are kind of technical but not 100% technical. We can end up in a better place where we are continually being able to bring in information from the market and from our prospects rather than just our existing customers. So what do people who don't know who we are want? That's a question that you should be asking yourself. It's really easy to convince somebody who knows who you are what to buy, because they know who you are. They've obviously aligned themselves with your bigger picture. Your product and company vision already aligns with what they do. What would you do to find a new person who didn't know who you were? And so that goes back to this idea of go to market. Go to market as an overview is really a 5-step process. You have to know who you're going to sell to. You have to develop your personas. Who are your common customer profiles? I don't like the term ideal customer profile. We don't sell to ideal. We sell to a set of common traits. So I prefer common customer profiles. We need to develop those personas. Who are those users? Who are those influencers? Who are those decision makers? We need to define what each one of those persons does, not at a detailed level. I think sometimes when people see that I use an Excel for this, they get a little overwhelmed. But you can go through this Excel. If you've ever worked with one of the kind of customers that you're looking for, you can do this exercise in less than an hour. So I think there's a real value here in kind of taking a look at the process, even if you don't use Excel, mapping taking those persons and mapping what they do. What do they do with other people? So what does your user do with the decision maker? How do they interact? Are they manager direct report? Are they at the same level and they just have different roles in the company? And then what are the hassles that are common to that process? People buy products that fix a problem that they have with their workday. It's that simple. They don't buy a product because it's blue and shiny. We think they do. They might in their private life, but from a business perspective, you always get into that ROI, and that's never calculated on the shininess of the blue paint. But it is prioritized. It is on the prioritization within the organization. So we have to understand what those processes are and what those hassles are, and then we have to understand how they fit together. So we can define which processes and values are most important to our common customer profile. And that's what we should be thinking about, always being at the front of our roadmap. So if we get these 5 steps right, we can product and developers can spend their time on step 3, that persona definition. So what I've done is expand here. And again, you don't have to use the Excel tool, but this kind of mapping out of a common process, this is really, kind of IT consulting 101. So you can see, we're looking at one persona, and this is actually the same example that's in the tool. A doctor, what's their role in technology decisions? Again, we're trying to figure out what makes them buy. This is not some cutesy exercise. This is about how do we get to business. So we want to know what the role in the decision making is. Do we actually care too much about what they do? They're the user, so yeah, we care. So that's their role in the decision making. What really is important when we're talking about reverse engineering from value to product is the 2 columns in the middle. What do they need and what do they care about? These are about what do they care about in their processes and in their day-to-day work life. So, for example, for a doctor, what do they need? They need access to all information. They need scannable, easy to view, and they need no barriers to access. Now, that's all great, but you can't build one product that does that. You can't even build a set of products that does that. So then we're taking that through the lens of what do they actually care about. So in this, let's stick with all access to all information. Well, they don't really mean all information. They mean all information relevant to patient care. And so patient care, and they're looking for expediency. So when you tie those 2 concepts together, the idea that they have a very specific need for all information, and they have a very specific timeline for when they need access to that information, you can kind of start to go, okay, well, from an attribute perspective, that's not as much they need access to everything, and we're not talking about single sign-on for all systems and federated sign-on and access to everything and no role-based controls. We're talking about, and then you tie that into the scannable and easy. Now we're talking about, okay, they need action. They need quick access to all the information around a single patient as fast as possible, but they also need it to be easy to view. They don't need every word. Right? And no barriers to access means that they can't have to sit in front of a specific computer in a specific kiosk. It has to be tied to who they are so they can do it quickly because their reputation is on the line. So you can see where you can use this and as a conversation, you can use that to kind of start to move backwards to attributes. And once you get to attributes, you're really in the more technical piece of the conversation. Let's take a bit of an example here. So this is one of the common customer profiles that my team created. This is Spun Consulting. They are an IT consulting firm, and they're what is commonly called in the field as an ISV or an independent solution provider. So what are we going to talk about? What do we want to know about them? We want to know what they do. What do they focus on? What's their big picture? What do they, if they do nothing else, what drives their revenue? So what are they interested? And so then that asks, well, what are they interested about that? So new revenue sources at lower cost. And they want the capabilities that drive new revenue opportunities, and they want to standardize connectors. Those are two really specific asks. So then we go to the next piece is the internal part. What do we want to get out of this customer profile? For us, in the way we have our processes designed here at OpenText, marketing is trying to get to the best meeting, so the best alignment of the customer and the right sales team, right place, right technical knowledge, everything. We want a high quality meeting has to have a decision maker and a technical user. But then here's where we get into the part that's interesting for product and product management and the roadmap is what are they likely to buy? This is where we've done the research. We've talked to our selling team. We've talked to prospects. We've talked to our existing customers. And we can boil it down to a couple lines. So what they're likely to buy is embedded features and capabilities that enhance their product. Again, this is a group that sells to other folks. So from a product perspective, they're at a big picture, they're looking for an intuitive experience and simplified administrative experience. Now, this is important product-wise because this kind of guides our prioritization. If it's a feature that doesn't do that and it's something that we can get away with leaving off for another cycle because it doesn't affect our security or our technical debt, maybe it ends up lower in the priority list. But a feature that makes the product move more intuitively is probably going to come up higher. And so, a real world example is the idea that everybody needs AI now. Why does everybody need AI? Because for years we've kind of assumed that the intuitive experience was a low priority item for customers. That's no longer true. So if you look at your roadmap and you look at what the market is doing and saying is they're saying, well, AI can replace 3/4 of what your product does. Why should I stay with you? Now you've got to rethink your roadmap, right? Now there's items in there that you maybe have kind of skipped a couple releases. Maybe you bring those up and that keeps you in line with your common customer profile. So in this case, who is a ICP or ISV? There's somebody looking for the tools. So we create this, and then this becomes part of our common language, the user, not the decision maker and the influencer, with the product team. So we're constantly saying, this is the big picture things that they do. How does our roadmap fit with that? And then what we do from a marketing perspective that we give to the product team is we look at and again, this works because we're a large enterprise. For a small company, maybe you don't do quite as detailed a market analysis of this. Maybe you look at one or two of your competitors and you look at what's on the front page. What are the top 2 or 3 features that they have on their page, and do you have those? And if you have those, could you go toe to toe with them in a demo? It can be that simple. What are the top 3 features that they're showing on their top page, and could you go toe to toe with them on a demo? If you can't, you should have a conversation about what's wrong in your roadmap or what could change in your roadmap. So let's take that a step deeper. Because we have that information at the company level, we also know, because we start from the bottom and work our way up, we know who the main user is, and it's Jay. Meet Jay. He's Spun's engineer. Jay's job is he works with clients to define technical needs, and he creates solutions. So again, we're giving for the engineering. This is kind of, if we can make Jay's job easier, and if we ground our attributes that we create in Jay's job, we're going to have a great alignment between the value of the product and the technical abilities of the product. Where this gets interesting is some of the big things that stress him out are not technical. They're actually just kind of documentation. They're the quote unquote easy wins. This is the bar for getting Jay to have a meeting with us so that we can talk about the greatness of the technical product. And this is where kind of, you get into this interesting world of how do you know Jay and how do you stay on top of Jay so that you can continue to use what he wants and the attributes of the technical solution that would meet his goals. How do you keep aligned with that? Well, you got to know where he gets his sources. He's really got three sources: the internet, for Jay, because they sell products. The VP of sales, Sean, here in the middle, and then the top executives who are doing their own research, Lisa here on the right hand side. They're all the inputs. They're sending Jay information. So what are these sources saying about Jay? They're saying that Jay's job is very dependent, and the features and what Jay does on a day-to-day basis is very dependent on his coworkers, right? So his influencer and decision maker. That won't always be true. You look at a doctor. If we did this for a doctor and Jay was a doctor instead, his sources would be, his medical foundations. They would be his peers. So his job would not be dependent, and the way that he works and makes decisions and what he thinks he needs technically would not be dependent on the administrator and on the nurses, right? So different set of people, and this then allows you to consistently say, how do we know what Jay's going to be worried about? In this case, Jay's going to be worried about what's freaking sales out, because that's going to be the people who are, remember, their company cares about revenue beyond everything else, and the cost of building what Jay builds is a key part of that. So anything that we can do as a company that reduces Jay's technical load to learn, to build, and to get their products to market is something where we've enabled Jay. That's the kind of product Jay will lobby for Sean and Lisa to get him. So, tying this back to real features. So at its simple, road mapping at its simplest level is looking at what the market's pushing. And again, using the same example of Jay and just going a level deeper, what's the market pushing for the Jays of the world, the ISV and the software engineers? Simplify their execution, more features, everybody loves more, and faster response times. My API is, 12 milliseconds faster than their API. And Jay cares about that. That's things that Jay legitimately cares about is the speed of the APIs. What does he actually care about on make his job easier? He wants any GUIs to be intuitive. He doesn't want them built for somebody else. Platform, not SaaS. He's looking for as few vendors as possible because he's going to build it anyways. And microservices, he's excited about microservices. And he wants platform level authorization. He doesn't want to have to sign in with a different code for the API and a different code for him when he signs in to restart the system or do whatever he has to do. He needs platform level authorization so he can do his job as fast as possible, and he can know that where the security is going to be from when he makes those calls. And what does that turn into? Big picture tech specs, not the actual size of the project and the backlog. Well, how would you solve intuitive GUI? It's going to be a web-based portal, which you can add some config or allow them to do some config on. So it's a portal. When we start talking about platforms and we talk about platform level authorization, look, we have one technical spec that can solve both those, whether we call that single sign-on or we use a security service or a password service. We're reducing the number of times they have to log in. And they're probably going to want API-based, UIs, not graphical UIs for how they work with the actual API, actual microservices. So now we've really defined what they're looking for. Now we have the ability to have a good conversation when we talk to Jay, and we know what they should build. And if those are our priorities, right? Because those now match what the customer wants. And it gets a lot deeper from there. And what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to stop because we could go on for hours on this topic. And with that, I'd like to say thank you for joining us for OCP number 3. We're working on OCP number 4, and we'll publish that shortly. Any questions, reach out to just direct message me on LinkedIn. We are looking to host more of these. If you have an idea, put it into the comments or reach out to me directly. Thank you.